UFC 315. UFC's back in Canada at Montreal. So, not anywhere particularly close to me. So, hey, I'll be watching on TV like the rest of you. We have a decent card. I will say that having two title fights on the card with their two high sad possibility fights on to headline the card is a bit weird, and also not an amazing main card. I mean, granted, Benoit Saint Denis versus who was he originally supposed to fight? Joel Alvarez would have made this a lot better, and then Alvarez pulled out, so now we get Kyle Prepolak on short notice. But even before that, there was it's a weird one in the sense that there is a fighter in each fight that I'm very excited about. Be that Jack Della Maddalena in the main event, be that Valentina Shevchenko and Manon Fiorot individually, but not necessarily as a matchup. Be that Jose Aldo, of course, Natalia Silva, Benoit Saint Denis. Not so much Mike Malott versus Charles Radke. I find myself kind of low on stock on both of those guys, and we'll get to that more in a bit. And then on the undercard, you've got Jessica Andrade and Jasmine Jasudavicius, who I have a lot of respect for, and it's an interesting fight on its own. But then there's not a lot other than that. Like, Navo Sterling's a good prospect. Looking forward to see what he can do in his second UFC outing. I have interest and ideas and hopes for Beksat Al-Makan, but at the same time, it's very much a what if type scenario that I need to. I mean, I guess in a nutshell, like him versus Brad Katona is a good a barometer fight that I hope to see something out of. But at the same time, it could just confirm that he's a regional can crusher, and that not can. That's a little bit of a harsh term, but a regional dominator that maybe doesn't have the UFC level X factors. Potentially that could be the case. So it's hard to get super excited about that fight, even though it's interesting. But at the same time, is it terrible? No, there's no fight that I'm absolutely dreading here. There are fights that have a bad version, but that's about it. I do quickly want to talk about Bo Nickel losing to Reiner de Ritter last week. Mostly because I think it spawned a huge amount of conversation from people who are still absolutely fans of Bo Nickel and don't want to hear anything negative about this. These are the type of people who are well, Reiner de Ritter's actually really, really good. Reiner de Ritter is a two-time or two-division one champion. These are all true things. All true things. And Bo Nickel losing doesn't mean anything. Which to be clear, is true. If Bo Nickel had gotten strangled by Reiner de Ritter, there'd be no real conversation to be had. You went in there with one of the most dangerous grapplers at 185, maybe the most dangerous grappler, maybe, and you got subbed. Okay, that's fine. That's going to happen. That's a thing. But the way that he got finished is definitely a concern because, and it's not that, and it's not a concern on its own because there's the Paul Craig fight. There's even the Cody Brundridge fight to a certain degree. When Bo Nickel isn't able to absolutely set the pace with impunity, he is not comfortable, and that has to be fixed. Don't get me wrong, Bo Nickel could still be champion. He is a phenomenal wrestler with all of the physical must-haves to be a top-end middleweight. It's all there. But the mental side of the game, it needs to be better. I think he needs more hard sparring. I'm not really a big hard sparring kind of guy. I think that it's something that should be phased out over time. Preserves the body, helps older fighters extend their careers. Robbie Lawler is a great example of this. But he has to get comfortable in a sense of a firefight. A sense of an actual danger zone. Because in all of his UFC fights, there has either been a complete lack of danger, option A, or option B, he has not handled that danger the way you'd like him to. Even though there's only one loss in there and everything, but there's like I said, there's the Paul Craig fight, which was terrible. And I understand he's very young in his career, but that's the thing is we have to be looking for these things. When you're judging a on the scene regional fighter, you're judging like young fighters. You're looking at them. You're like, you're 5 fights in. Okay, what's the good? What's the bad? What's the X factors you have physically? What's the technical aspects that appear to be coming together? And that's the thing is, if you saw Bo Nickel have these fights and you weren't blinded by Bo Nickel's like star, you kind of have to go, okay, no, I see this. Great wrestling, physical, has a little pop. Mechanics are a bit rusty, but like, he can be aggressive and apply that power. But there's a definitive discomfort here, and that needs to be addressed. And also, the other thing is, like, it's kind of weird because Bo Nickel talked about coming into this fight that this was one of the harder weight cuts. He was coming down quite a bit. I think he was saying something like 220 pounds. And people are like, well, no. Ryder de Ridder's just too big. It's like, maybe he has to go down to welterweight or something. Like, no. This is not a size issue. This is not it. Like, the size is part of it with Ryder de Ridder because Ryder de Ridder is huge for middleweight. But, like, no. Dude. I haven't heard anyone in his camp talking about that, and I really hope that that's not on the table. I really hope that no one is in Bo Nickel's ear going, well, what about if he just went down to 170? Because no, that fixes nothing. Anyways, I still hope Bo Nickel will put something together. I'm not in the horribly anti-Bo Nickel camp that really wants to see him like crash and burn, because I'm always game to see somebody good. Like, I'm always game to see somebody arise to that top level of contention, and he has that ability. He has that potential. So I wish him the best. But like, that's the thing is that the critical feedback, the not being happy with him as is about him becoming better. It's not about the haterade, for me anyways. For some people it definitely is, but it's not about the haterade. It's about putting it together and actually becoming the best Bo Nickel that he can be. That's the hope. So let's get into this fight card, but before we do, we always have to have this little discussion. I'm going to talk about fighting odds. I'm going to talk about what I'm betting on. I'm going to talk about information you can use to make a bet. But betting on MMA, not a path to financial freedom. Please do not use it as such. Please do not think of it as such. And we move on. I don't want anyone coming back and be like, I lost 10 grand betting on somebody you told me to bet on. Number one, I'm not going to tell you to bet on anyone. That's your business. I'm going to say who I could see as a reasonable bet, but I am not going to tell you have to bet on anybody. Jack Della Maddalena, Belal Muhammad for the UFC welterweight title. I never thought Belal Muhammad would be a champion. I also never thought I'd be picking him to defend a title and have it not be a hot take because Belal is the minus 188 to minus 220 favorite here. And Jack Della Maddalena, JDM, is plus 146 to plus 175. So it's not a hot take, and that's kind of the weird thing. Let's get the negatives about Belal out of the way. He can be a bit dull. I actually personally find his fights reasonably exciting, but like, I am not exciting, I shouldn't say, because I don't find them exciting. I find them interesting, but I also find them interesting in a similar way to how I found John Fitch's fights interesting. In that this is a guy who does not have the top-end athleticism of a UFC champion. Truthfully, he does not. The physical attributes that he has that I would say are UFC level are cardio, because he has phenomenal cardio. He has, I don't even want to say durability, because I've seen him hurt a couple times. Recuperability might be the better word there. And obviously, all the mental aspects that you would want. He's got the mental discipline, the mental toughness, and whether it's him or his coaching, you never know, I guess. But whether it's him or his coaching, he is coming up with the right game plan and the right in-fight decisions at any given time to beat guys who have a lot more physical potential than he does. And that is how he's gotten the belt here. That is how he has slain the Dragon of Leon Edwards, which admittedly is looking like less and less of a achievement the more I watch Leon versus Colby Covington, and the more I watch Leon Edwards post that fight, losing to Sean Brady, maybe kind of like just stumbled on just some mental neuroses that Leon Edwards lacks. Like it's kind of like if you took the mind of Belal Muhammad and the body of Leon Edwards, you would have an absolutely unstoppable fighter, and that would be scary and horrifying. But he is a guy who is dedicated to breaking his opponent with whatever is on the table. And in this case, I think that's going to be pressure. Jack Della Maddalena does not handle wrestling particularly well. I'm not saying that he has terrible takedown defense or whatever. Not particularly. He can stop takedowns. But he will sometimes go back in on, he will sometimes refuse the option to separate and terminate a takedown sequence and try to turn it into his own. And I don't think you should do that against Bilal Muhammad. There's just some, questionable fight decisions when the takedown is invited by Jack Della Maddalena. I really like Jack Della Maddalena, but that has always stopped me from seeing him as a champion. I've never really gotten there. I understand, when he beat Gilbert Burns, people were like, oh, he might be a champion material. And I just never got that. I felt that fight was, don't get me wrong, a very good win. But it had more to do with Gilbert Burns being no longer that top guy. I really like Jack Della Maddalena. I really do. He's a very exciting, technical brawler. There is, I guess his Kevin Holland fight was a little bit lackluster. But aside from that, it's an exciting, can't miss deal when he's on a card. And at the same time, I don't see him as a champion. I see Bilal Muhammad putting the pressure on him. Now, if there's any consolation, any JDM fans out there, I didn't see Bilal Muhammad becoming champion either. And that happened. So that's obviously on the table. That is 100% out there. But I think Bilal is going to bring the pressure to him, is going to bring the pace to him, is going to bring the wrestling to him, is going to make this fight take place a lot along the cage. And Jack Della Maddalena, he's not really that kind of puncher to instantly terminate that like that. He's a guy who requires combinations and long sequences of strikes to get finishes a lot of the time. And as opposed to Derek Lewis, I'm going to just terminate you with this one big shot type deal. It's not dynamic or powerful in that kind of sense. It's not that explosive. It's about technically sucking you into deep waters and getting the job done. So at the end of the day, I do have to give Bilal Muhammad, the game plan edge, the chain wrestling edge, the dedication to pressure, tenacity, and toughness, and make it happen. So it'd be cool to see Jack Della Maddalena win the belt. I do largely suspect that Bilal Muhammad will have a relatively short title reign, but I have him retaining by decision here. Valentina Shevchenko, Manon Fiorot. Shevchenko is surprisingly enough the underdog here, plus 118 to plus 124, minus 145 to minus 150 on Fiorot. I get it. I understand it. Fiorot is bigger, has a very similar stylistic to her. She's only got 2 inches height, half inch of reach though. I've compared these two girls a lot because they fight very similar in the sense that there's good technical form to them. There's a really good base set of kickboxing skills to them, and there's an amazing physicality backing that up. Very strong, very imposing, just a rock that is going to be really, really hard to do anything with. But there's also I don't want to say a lack of intelligence, because, well, for Fiorot, it's been nothing but winning, and for Valentina, it's mostly been winning. So, awareness. There we go. Awareness of decision making and adaptation in a fight, and bad habits that have come from that. And that's kind of why I'm worried about this fight being between the two best women's flyweights in the world, if not, I don't know, 2 of the 3 best. Maybe Dakota Chicheva fits in there somewhere. But 2 very elite fighters for the weight class. A very high level matchup. But that could just be dull, because it could be an instant one person controlling the exchanges and proving that their version of power kickboxing is actually going to just nullify the other one, and the other one's not going to have any real answers for it, but they're going to be tough enough, physical enough, big enough that there's not a domination, that it's not a beat down. It's just It's just like Fiorot Thug Rose all over again, kind of. And like that was a high level fight. That was a really like two of the best female fighters in the world. But it was kind of dull at the same time. Some I'm not super hopeful. I am going to go give the nod to Valentina, probably just because she's the underdog. Because honestly, when I was very, very 50-50, and then I looked at the odds and I was like, Valentina as the underdog here has a lot of appeal to me. A lot of appeal. So I think that's the answer for it. I do think she has a little bit more tools in the toolkit, and that she has shown some capacity to adapt and do different things. Whereas with Fiorot, it really is kind of a two element thing. It's, I'm going to strike with you at range with a relatively limited, but like, again, very good form, very technically sound toolkit. And then if it gets in close, I'm going to mug you in the clinch. And Valentina has a little bit ability to inject something a little bit extra. Like, that kind of describes her game as well. But like, she does have the admittedly bad idea spins, but she also has a little bit more of a more wide toolkit at range, a little bit wider toolkit in the clinch, a little bit more complete. And she is definitely starting to fall off. I mean, that largely led to a really unfortunate battle with Tyler Santos, and then 3 fights with Alexa Grasso, where it became. I think I actually came out ironic, like after the first one, I'm like, holy shit, Grasso's got like game plans and stuff and can deal with this. And then as time goes on, I'm just like, but it's also like really bad. There's some really bad elements too. So it kind of like got undermining, and we're gonna talk about Grasso later. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Valentina. Just I'm going to go with the OG model of what Manon Fiorot is trying to be. There you go. But it's also the older model, and I think I'm being influenced by the fact that indeed you can get Shevchenko at plus money. Jose Aldo versus Ayman Zahabi. Aldo the favorite at minus 205 to minus 235. Zahabi at plus 168 to plus 180. I'm going to be blunt here. I've had a ridiculously bad track record with Ayman Zahabi fights. I think I'm 1-3 in his last 5, and it might be 2-2. I might have picked him to beat Ricky Turcios because I have definitively no faith in Ricky Turcios. Just having a quick beverage there. But I don't know. Like he got to the UFC as an older fighter. He's 37 now. Like, for comparison, he's almost as old as Aldo, and he's like relatively new to the UFC. I haven't really changed my viewpoint on his skills despite his success. He's still very smart, very good game plan, and all of that. The mental approach is there. He's Firas Zahabi's brother, and I think it shows in the game plan and the in-fight decision-making even. The ability to adapt is there. Got a good little bit of pop, but he's just, I think, fundamentally too slow-paced. It's not a cardio thing, because like his fight with Pedro Munoz. He like fought at a really, really high pace there, but it was like because Munoz was putting a pace on him, and he had to respond. So there's no weaponizing pace to his game, and there's not really there's a perfectly serviceable defensive wrestling game to him and counter wrestling game, but there's not a offensive mollywop, take the fight out of you, suck the life out of you wrestling game. And those are the two ways that tend to catch up Aldo, because he's old. He's still technically very good as a striker. He's still quite fast. He's still quite powerful, very precise. But like, his problem is that he can't keep up the cardio necessarily the way he would like to, and he gets stuck in these long, soul-grinding wrestling exchanges. And that's how he loses. That's how he lost to Merab. That's how he lost to Mario Bautista in a fight that was kind of a letdown for a lot of people, I think. Because I think we were hoping Bautista would kind of have an exciting fight with him. But, like, you know, he is still beating Jonathan Martinez, Rob Font, Pedro Munoz, Marlon Vera. And these are the guys who can't really do those things to him. They're the guys who are going to kind of let Aldo have his fight. And I kind of think Zahabi is that guy. I think Zahabi's going to try to have counters for his game. I think Zahabi's going to try to take elements away from him. But at the end of the day, Ayman Zahabi is not going to make things happen on a smothering level. So I've got Aldo by decision. Alexa Grasso versus Natalia Silva. Grasso is plus 150 to plus 205. I'm surprised at that line for a former champion. Minus 200 to minus 250 on Silva. What do I like about Alexa Grasso? I like the fact that she really actually punished some of the dumbest things that Valentina Shevchenko does and got the title. But I really don't like the fact that in the second and the third fight, it seemed like her game was regressing. Her ability to punish the flaws in Shevchenko's game became less apparent. And her own lackluster elements physically are a problem. Like, she's not super fast. She's not able to really control the range that you in a way that you would love. Like, she's 5'5", 66-inch reach, so like she's got certain physical edges there, but like there's just not there's not the foot speed, there's not the dynamicism, there's not the hand speed, there's not the power, obviously, and there's not the wrestling. Is also the big problem here. And Natalia Silva is a fighter who I think is going to have a very sharp decline, because a lot of her game involves being fast, being explosive, being quick, being a fast twitch type of fighter. And that is the first thing to go. But like at the same time, it's still here now. Like, she's 28. I'm not expecting it to be gone now. So is there a risk that the gaps that I see in Silva's game and have seen since day one will bite her here? Sure. It's on the table. But I also think that she can strafe in and out of the pocket, land strikes, land quick stuff, and the fact that Grasso is not a particularly big hitter, and not a particularly competent wrestler, means that she'll be able to get the better of those exchanges and like do what she kind of wants on the way to a decision, because Grasso is super tough, and Silva hasn't shown a great deal of finishing ability. So I am going to go with Silva, but I'm just hoping for a good scrap here. Benoit Saint-Denis, Kyle Prepolak. Saint-Denis is minus 1,100 to minus 1,430, plus 600 to plus 850. It is what it is. I'm not even going to say anything about Benoit Saint-Denis other than he's going to win either by submission or ground and pound TKO. It's Kyle Prepolak. Welcome back to the UFC, kid. Although he's not much younger than me, so I don't know if I can say kid. He's got a decent little bit of pop, a little bit of creativity, decently well-rounded, tough guy, but we've seen him in the UFC before, losing to Nordin Talib, which is fine. He's a welterweight, and Austin Hubbard. But like, if you're losing to Austin Hubbard, and I mean pretty convincingly losing to Austin Hubbard too, you're probably just not UFC level, and nothing he's done since then has really, shown that. He's not a particular X Factor athlete. He's a perfectly fine technician, but it's also not an X Factor. So yeah, Benoit Saint-Denis will probably maul him. Mike Malott versus Charles Radke. Malott minus 190 to minus 215. Radke plus 155 to plus 165. I'm going with Malott here. It's some people have suggested that my dislike of Charles Radke has to do with his, we'll just say, outspoken politicalness. It's not. If you go all the way back to when he was debuted and he fought, and the breakdown of the Blood Diamond fight, like, there was no political aspects to him. There was nothing there. There was nothing on the table. Like, he was just a guy signed by the UFC, and there was nothing more to it. I said it then. It's like, this guy is a scrappy counter wrestler and scrambler type dude with, like, who has good power. Like, he hits hard. But he's 5'9" at welterweight, which is a bit short. He's thick as hell, so I don't think he should cut weight or anything. But he's not a big welterweight. And he can't really weaponize his wrestling in a really good way because he doesn't really have entries for it. And he's not a particularly good striker. Like, he's a dangerous striker because he's got power, but like very limited setups and so on. Like, there's just not a lot there. And the guys he's beaten are guys like, well, Blood Diamond, who's bad. Let's just put that card on the table. He's just bad. He got signed because he was buddies with Israel Adesanya. That was really about it. And then Gilbert Urbina, who's got some serious, durability issues and like finding his way into a fight issues. The loss to Carlos Prates is nothing, and then Matthew Semmelsberger's like, his soul is gone. So, like, could he knock out Mike Malott? Yeah, totally. It's on the table. But Malott is a bigger welterweight. He is not a good striker. He is a janky striker, but he's got some pop in his own strikes that makes you have to respect him. He's got a wrestling game. He's got a grappling game. He's got a backtake game. He's Team Alpha Male Canada version, which isn't actually all that great, but but no, I do expect him to be just kind of like too big, too grappling centric, and to have the power to make Radke respect him, and he's pretty durable. Like we haven't seen him really get hurt all that much. His own wins don't mean a ton. Like knocking out Mickey Gall is not actually a huge achievement at this point in time, but nor is beating Johan Leonis or Adam Fugit or even Trevin Giles, to be honest. But it is more than what Charles Radke has achieved, and without the hard limitations that Radke is facing. So yeah, a lot by decision. Jessica Andrade versus Jasmine Jasudavicius, plus 200 to plus 240 on Andrade, minus 275 to minus 310 on Jasudavicius. And I'm taking Jessica Andrade here, the underdog again. The reason is okay, Andrade is fading. Let's be honest. Let's be real. Let's put the cards on the table. She is a falling down stock fighter at the age of 33, and that is sad. But she is still very, very strong. Very, very hard to take down and control if you're not an S-tier athlete, i.e. Tatiana Suarez. And Jasudavicius is not that. Jasudavicius is a good, hardworking, kind of a female version of Bilal to a certain degree, where like she gets stuff done. Although in her case, she is quite big for the weight class at least. But she gets stuff done without necessarily having the athletic ability you would want to implement her game. But she gets on top of you. She gets positional dominance. She will pound away. And she will set records for women's ground and pound. I don't see her getting Andrade down and controlling her to that level. I could be wrong. Andrade's performances have been all over the place, where some of them have been just like very sad. But I think this specific attack challenge is still one that she's quite capable of dealing with. She's the better striker of the two. Yes, she is 6 inches shorter in reach and 6 inches shorter in height, so like obviously there's some problems there, but Jasudavicius' game doesn't really prioritize reach or anything like that. She's going to be there to eat low kicks. She's going to be there to eat hard punches, and I've got Andrade by decision. So we'll see what happens. Modestas Bukauskas versus Ion Cutelaba. Ion Cutelaba fights are always just very, very simple. By the way, this is about an even money fight. Minus 110 to minus 114 on Bukauskas. Minus 108 to minus 115 on Cutelaba. Cutelaba either like pancakes you in the first round, or we get a really crappy decision, or we get him getting finished. And I'm gonna go with option 3. Bukauskas is not super, super durable, so I could definitely see the first one where Cutelaba comes out like a house on fire, and he's throwing all the power punches and the grappling and the wrestling takedowns and the slams that he likes to do, and he comes out there and he just puts Bukauskas in a body bag. Like that is totally on the table. But if I'm picking, and I am, I'm picking Bukauskas to survive that 5 minutes of absolute carnage and just pick apart what's left of Cutelaba. So there you go. Navajo Sterling versus Ivan Erslan. Sterling. Sterling's UFC debut was a bit disappointing against Tukatokos. He got taken down a couple times. He got controlled for a little bit. He ended up going to decision with a guy who is pretty finishable. And it does ask some questions, but like at the same time, he's still a 6'4", 79-inch 205er. He's still a pretty good athlete. He still has the City Kickboxing camp at his back. And all the things that entails with the success that camp has had. And he still has a dangerous striking game. And Erslan is not good. He's like reasonably durable, reasonably decent athlete and everything. But, actually very, very durable. He took the Cutelaba murder machine and actually went to decision with him. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not sure what he offers really to him, because he's not going to do Tokas's pressure, relentlessness that did give Sterling some problems. And he looks a lot more like Philip Latu or Sam Kai or Stu. Well, okay, he's better than these guys I'm mentioning because the guys that Navajo Sterling finished on the regional scene are quite bad. But in terms of like the challenges, he's the type of guy that like I would imagine Navajo Sterling is training to beat, and I've got him by decision. He's taller, he's longer. Urslan's not really got the veteran guile that you would want. He's also got a particularly short reach, 72 inches for 6'2". That's always going to be a limiting factor. I mean, he's not an amazing athlete. Like, he's not a bad athlete, but he's not an amazing athlete. Marc-Andre Barrio versus Bruno Silva. Barrio is minus 148 to minus 150, plus 118 to plus 125. These are both fighters that have seen better days. Barrio's on a 3-fight losing streak. Bruno Silva just got beaten by Ismail Nardiev, which is that is not good. It's Barrio is the pick here. Like, Silva is a broken fighter. He doesn't look like he belongs. He doesn't look like he wants to be there, and he doesn't look like he's capable of being there anymore. Barrio still looks like he wants to be there. Like, his chin is going, obviously. You can't get knocked out by Dustin Stolfus and not have, like, concerns about anybody knocking you out going forward. But the dude is still a functional fighter who looks interested in being in there, and Bruno Silva doesn't. So Barrio by decision. I think it's going to be an ugly, ugly fight and maybe kind of depressing. Daniel Santos versus Jung Young Lee is the second to last fight of the day. Santos, it's two opposite sides of the coin here. Santos is a physical fighter with all the dynamic, explosive, powerful, fast attributes that you would love to see in a UFC fighter, and none of the thought process. He is going to go out there and he's going to, every decision he makes is going to be probably wrong, but done with like as much explosiveness and speed as you can imagine, that he gets away with it a lot of the time. And Lee is a fine athlete, but not one that makes any like headlines. He is a very textbook wrestle boxer kind of game with some decent counters, and some good body work, and actually has some decent clinches. So I guess that's where I was going with that as well. But I don't know. It's kind of one of those things. Like, does the textbook thing work out, or does Santos's dynamic, wild man explosiveness get the job done? I'm gonna go with, at the end of the day, that Lee beat Blake Bilder, who is a more structured but still badly structured good athlete, and he can control the wildness of Daniel Santos. And that loss to Hyder Emil, which at the time looked kind of damning, because I was like, Hyder Emil is kind of a wild man and kind of like really unstructured, kind of like Santos. But we're kind of coming to the realization that Emil is like legitimately kind of psychotic in the fact that he brings the noise like with a fearlessness that I don't necessarily know that Santos has. Like, Santos is more silly. Emil is more storm the castle Viking berserker type. So I'm going to go with Lee by decision. He is the favorite, minus 110 to minus 120. Santos is plus 100 to minus 110. I'm moderately surprised by that. I thought Santos would be the favorite. He's had more success in the UFC. He's beaten John Castaneda, who's a good fighter. But I'll go with Lee. I'll go with the brain pick and not the groin pick. Brad Katona versus Beksat Almakhan. Talked about this one at the top. There's not much to say about Brad Katona. He's the underdog here at plus 130 to plus 150. He is a volume boxer, a hardworking guy, a decent scrambler and counter grappler, etc., but has a hard time terminating exchanges in a manner that would be good, and doesn't really have that physical attribute that allows him to stamp any kind of authority on a fight. He's not super strong. He's not super fast. He's not super dangerous. He's not super powerful. And that means that this is a guy who kind of goes to close fights with just about anyone. And sometimes that bites him because, he probably should have beaten Garrett Armfield. He didn't. And there's an argument that he maybe should have beaten Jan Matsumoto, but he didn't. And then, even in his first run with the UFC, where he won the Ultimate Fighter, beating the likes of Bryce Mitchell and Kyler Phillips, who are far more successful, fighters. And then Jay Cusinello in the final. By the way, what happened to Jay Cusinello? Good Lord. What happened to that guy's career? He came out the Ultimate Fighter with a lot of heat on him. And then beat Matthew Lopez, but then he beat Merab Dvalishvili in a fight that, actually looks kind of close. And in hindsight, that's pretty good. And then lost to Hunter Rezer, which in hindsight actually looks pretty bad. But yeah, there's just not a dominating aspect to his fight, which means that everybody is going to be in a fight with him. And it's going to be It's gonna be problems. Actually, I'm looking up Jay Cusinello's record right now, and here is the answer. After losing to Brad Katona, he went and did a bare knuckle boxing match with Robbie Peralta. That's a bad idea. He lost that, got knocked out by Jamal Embers, and got knocked out by Jacob Bonnick. So yeah, there is your answer, and he's doing bare knuckle boxing and exhibition boxing now. Okay. So we went down that side path. So Al-Makhan is the more interesting fighter here because Al-Makhan is a guy who came to the UFC and he's minus 165 to minus 186 here with like a little bit of hype, but like at the same time, it was very, very thin. The resume was not good. It was very, very regional. That's the word I'm going to use. And he came into the UFC and he got run over by Umar Nurmagomedov for 15 minutes, which is not a problem. Umar is amazing. But it kind of leaves me with all these like questions where it's like, yeah, there are moments of glory on the regional scene of like doing cool things, but it's against people who can't really punish the silliness that sometimes he engaged in and can't really match him physically. And I know I just spent all that time talking about how Brad Katona is not a physically UFC caliber fighter because he's not. But at the same time, Katona is not the kind of guy that you're ever going to feel that in control of, that you can do the silliness. So, like, Al-Makhan has the potential to be a far better fighter than Katona because Katona is hard limited. But I'm not sold on it. I'm just not. Like, yeah, there could be some fun striking stuff there. There can be some fun, risky grappling stuff there. But I'm not convinced it actually would work at a high level. And I'm not convinced that he like even can like turn a fight dynamically because he could. It's not that he lost to Umar Nurmagomedov. It's the fact that there was just like literally nothing he could get done. Like even some of the most dominant Khabib Nurmagomedov fights, just to go with the whole Nurmagomedov name here for a second, there would be like a moment or two where the other guy would seemingly have something. And Al-Makhan just got run over like by a steamroller. So I can't pick him here. I'm going to go with Katona. I'm going to go with the underdog love. I'm going to go with the patriotic love. I'm ready to be wrong, and I actually hope to be wrong because Al-Makhan is the guy who might be something interesting moving up in this division, and Katona is not. Katona is where Katona is. Opening guy, put him in there with dudes who are used to kind of crushing people and see what happens. Because he's, for all of his faults and all of his limitations, he is not crushable. He is the guy who's going to give the Yan Matsumoto's a hard fight when they need to like show what they've got. And maybe I'm reading too much of the fact that Matsumoto then went to have a pretty good fight with Rob Font. So I have a reasonably large amount of respect for the people who passed that test. So Katona by decision, that is the fight card. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown. I hope you enjoy the fight. I'm not going to be watching it live, so if you're one of the people who follows me on Twitter and like enjoys my picks and my breakdowns live, that won't be happening this weekend. I've got a work/social function. It's a social function, but like it's with people from work. So there you go. So I'll be missing that and watching it after the fact, probably on Sunday. Anyways, out of the tax season, so expect the more regular schedule on the podcast and over on the YouTube and the Twitch and so on. So enjoy. And if you're following the Fight Simulator, obviously on Discord, expect more action there. There is a link tree and relative links in the description down below if you want to check out any of what I just talked about. So have a good day. Enjoy the fights. Bet responsibly. I'm out of here.